There's a couple of questions that have popped in, but because I missed, well, technology missed the first couple of minutes, I've got a theory myself, and it applies to both of your presentation, and it also applies to a question that's come in from Terry, which is quite interesting. So let me share it with you. So I'm not quite sure how I came across this publication. This publication was first published here in the UK in 1958, and it's entitled Fire Alarms, Systems and Fire Extinguishment. It's actually a study book for the Chartered Institute of Insurers, designed especially for the use for their students. And inside this book, you can see, hopefully I'll show it there, okay. There's lots of drawings, lots of lots of tables and words and God knows what, but this is kind of like, this is where it all started to a certain degree in terms of standards and technology. So legacy engineering still exists. So in my opinion, we're still doing a lot of things that we always did before. However, it's looking at the presentations that we've seen already, technology, innovation, standards have all moved on considerably. And we've actually got Jason's kind of interpretation of a fire alarm system being a microprocessor on the wall. And like you, Jason, I cut my teeth on some very, very early microprocessors, some of which I could tell you some stories about. But there's something that's actually missing in all of this change, and irrespective of the type of active fire system that we're looking at. And Vinay, the end of your presentation actually touched on some of those images. And Jason, you also said about handover of the system. Okay, I'll share this theory. My theory is user adoption, and user adoption means people understanding why the active fire system is installed, what it actually does, what its purpose is, and more to the point, this thing of, unless of course you've been directly involved in the fire or you're in the fire industry, in my personal opinion, or when I speak to people and I go in and kind of measure the culture of some premises, which changes dramatically. But the general opinion is that fire safety is somebody else's responsibility. And that is kind of, whether you're in a small hotel, it's something where you need to tick the box maybe. And this thing of the responsible person feels that he can delegate that fire, that fire safety management. And responsibility is unclear. And this thing of handing over the system, giving the user operation manuals and this, that, and the other, nothing actually legislates for the transiency of the people that are going to be in that building or the changes that are going to take part in that building. The system's in there for life, but the building's going to change, the people are going to change. And because the people change, in my opinion, this, if you like, culture thing gets more diluted and more diluted and more diluted, to the point that fire safety is somebody else's responsibility. This doesn't apply to every single building type. I know certain sort of industries and, if you like, vertical markets, from data centers to healthcare, where competency is extremely high and fire safety is taken extremely seriously, but it's not consistent across the board. So that's my theory. And what I want to do is I want to just kind of ask the pair of you is that, do you believe that at some stage in the future, there will be some degree of driving license or competency evidence that's going to be needed for somebody that is responsible for managing fire safety within a building? That qualification is personal. They can take it from job to job to job. And whilst we have a myriad of health and safety training, which covers tons of stuff, I'm talking specifically about the management of active fire precautions. And active fire precautions could be anything from emergency lighting, fire detection, suppression, etc., etc. But I'm going to ask you, Jason, how do you see the market evolving? And do you think that eventually competency for the end user is going to be something that's going to be required by law?
Yeah, I mean, if you go back many years, we've in the UK, we've tried to make sure that people that are designing and installing and commissioning systems are trained to do so. I was involved many, many years ago in LPS 1014. Yeah, so getting LPS 1014 accreditation for the Manchester branch of Tyco as it was at the time. So if we're going to accredit those people and make sure that the people that are designing the systems and commissioning and installing the systems, we should absolutely do exactly the same thing with the people that are using the systems. Yeah, you talk about a transient community, a transient people in the building, and it's absolutely right. Here, more than any, the buildings tend to be managed by security personnel, yeah, who yesterday were patrolling a car park, yeah, and today they've been brought into a building and they're now dealing with a fire alarm system. Do they know how that building system is programmed to operate? No clue, not a clue. Do they know how to use a fire alarm system? Maybe, but unfortunately, we make these fire alarm systems look so big and scary that nobody wants to actually touch them. You know, we're seeing a lot more now done with computers. People are controlling and monitoring systems using computers, and I find people are more comfortable using a computer to control a fire alarm panel than they are actually pushing buttons on a fire alarm panel, because fire alarm panels are scary things. So it would be absolutely great if there were people that were trained and certified on the use of fire systems, and they would be the people that would be brought in to manage that building. But I think it's a fantastic idea. We don't have that now.
No. It's a huge gap. Vinay, how do you see that?
The way I look at it, Tony, I think there's a level of mistrust by the fire industry with respect to end users. We think that what we have is something rocket science and people will not understand it. And we are actually disrespecting their basic intellect. An average woman inside a household now can operate a robotic vacuum.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and that too from her smartphone. They can operate a lot of gadgets nowadays. And it works both ways, actually. It's a lack of interest by the end users themselves, because they think that, yeah, it's not my job. Somebody else is coming and doing it. I see some maintenance guys coming and doing maintenance of my detection system. So at least they know that, yeah, those detectors, they are doing maintenance. And then the way they look at it, okay, sometimes it keeps giving me unwanted alarm that Jason was talking about. But very few of them actually understand what exactly is the sprinkler there for.
Yeah.
And why is it so? Because we have not taken that efforts as an industry to educate them.
Absolutely. I feel personally it's a huge gap. Like I say, technology is racing at the pace. Microprocessors, Internet of Things that Phil touched on earlier. But I don't. Go on. Sorry, Jason.
Sorry, Tony. No. Sorry. I'm going to say. Can I mention technology is racing ahead? You're right. But I'm a believer. I've like you. I dealt with systems, very, very basic systems years ago. Yeah, and they were easy to operate. I'm a believer. The technology that you now have and the programming capabilities that you have in fire alarm systems now are unbelievable. I mean, I could make a fire alarm system sing to any tune I want. Yeah, they're very, very good now. But I'm actually a believer of just because you can make the programming of a fire alarm system complex so that it would ignore all these alarms doesn't mean you have to. Yeah, and a lot of people will try. You could actually go the other way. You could use technology so much that you end up just driving false alarms, or false, I've used the bad word, unwanted alarms, because you are using that technology to the nth degree. And it makes the system that complicated for an end user to use that they've got no chance of using it. Yeah.
And I think in addition to that, when you get into things like complicated cause and effects, and user understanding of how they've got to protect that, irrespective of who's servicing the system once it's installed. One wrong key move, as in adding a detector, making a change, putting a wall up, all this kind of one wrong key move in reprogramming that cause and effect can completely annihilate all of the good intent and the good design intent that originally existed at the time that the system went in, simply because for whatever reason somebody's made a mistake, they're worried about what's for dinner, and that there aren't enough checks and balances. But I don't believe that the users really understand the if you like, complexity of how potentially things can go wrong. And of course, when things do go wrong, the first thing is we'll blame the equipment, we'll blame the system. It must be the system. The fact that the fire door was left wedged open whilst the toaster was burning the toast and the heat detector didn't pick it up, the two smoke detectors in the corridor did, because it was doing its job, is not the customer. It's not perceived as being the customer's problem. Well, it's a fire alarm. It shouldn't. It's only toast. Why did it go off? So, I think it's safe to say that between kind of your world, Vinay, and certainly yours, Jason, that it's an area that industry needs to at least look at. And I think whilst we've got associations like British Institute of Facilities Managers, which I know are over in the UAE, and we've got a hell of a lot of, if you like, professional bodies that are pushing the standards, pushing the technology, but the disconnect with the end user, I feel, is severely overlooked. And like I say, the only way to change that is to almost mandate a competency qualification. And I mean, you must, all right, so we can say with passive fire protection, how many stories do you hear of people cutting a big hole in order to get an LCD television, if you like, stuck in their wall just to flush it in, not realizing that they've just done away with, that's a bit of live interaction, without the that's Ring doorbell. Someone's at the front door. How good is that? Technology does work after all. But this disconnect and people not realizing that you can't just go and cut a big hole in a 30-minute wall sticker. And I just feel that disconnects the ownership, the criteria of it's somebody else's problem, et cetera, et cetera. And fire safety is somebody else's problem, when in fact fire safety is everybody's responsibility. And I'm just wondering whether or not in the Middle East or with UAE, do you believe that eventually civil defense will appreciate the fact that, if you like, they're spending time and resource actually dealing with issues associated where, if users were competent, they wouldn't spend half the time that they do dealing with issues? Do you feel that might change quicker?
Did you want to say something, Vinay?
Yeah, I mean, what I wanted to say was, like other industries within the operating within the built environment, if I have to take an example, we talk about energy efficiency in a built environment, and we have now a rating system for the buildings, energy efficiency and the green buildings, and all those things. We at no point of time as an industry talk about fire safety rating of the built environment. Why can't we have a rating system for the safety of the built environment? I go into the building, at the entrance of the building, I get to know what is the rating of fire safety in that building. Yes,
I agree. And in terms of how you see the UAE market evolving, in order to, I think everybody's got to get on the same platform here, from designers, installers, people that's commissioning, maintaining, but we've got to include the end users. And it's just an interesting question that's coming. This is from William, who's basically saying that BSI have just started introducing such a scheme, which is BS 8670. So, okay, that's a starter, but when we look at the introduction of the RRFSO, which was in 2005, and how slowly the adoption was. A, because there was an element of confusion, and B, the fire brigade changed from being a prescriptive advice bureau to actually an enforcement agency. Although the BSI has got something there, I would really question, without some mandatory clout behind it, or some requirements even from an employer, that I don't. Why would somebody really need to say that they comply to the BS if that is associated with end user responsibility? I don't see it happening unless it's mandated. Do you guys?
No, I can't see it. People are not going to, in order to train the people to do this, there's going to be a cost element involved, and no one's going to do that unless it becomes mandatory. We have in here in the UAE, in Dubai, we have a training facility, and we would welcome any end user to come in and play around with these panels in a safe environment. If you make a mistake and the fire alarm operates, it doesn't matter. We have that here in Dubai, and with our EN systems along with the UL systems as well. And we would encourage people to come in and play around with these things and realize that they're not actually as scary as people think they are. But unless it becomes mandatory, I can't see anybody buying into it. It has to be done.
Kill my phone. Vinay, and your last thoughts before we, I think someone's at the front door.
Very busy.
Yeah, I think we're getting close to time, to be honest with you, gentlemen. But Vinay, just in terms of wrapping up, we've got 2 or 3 minutes left. Just final thoughts.
Look, I highlighted the issues of perception versus reality, particularly in the logistics and warehousing sector. And I think we don't need to go overtly there, but then if we adopt simple steps like marking threshold levels of storage at the top on those walls of the warehouses, that will give those simple markups for our guidelines for operator, that he cannot pass that line in order to have a protection still remaining valid. And this is just an example that I'm telling, but there are many such simple steps that we can adopt, and we can still maintain the level of fire safety within. But what is important for doing that is that those users of the facility must understand first the importance of what is available with them. If that is not known to them, they will not realize the full potential of it.
So in terms of, I agree with what you're saying, but in terms of dealing with the transiency of staff, the people are actually going to be in that building, how do you solve that problem?
No, that the managers and the owners of these places will need to adopt a constant training approach. There has to be a basic, like you go into a high hazard area, and the first thing that you go is basically go through orientation, your health and safety orientation, without which you are not allowed to enter to a particular area. The same way, as part of their job profile, they must go through this as their orientation, and they will need to adopt such practices. Only then that this can be successful.
Okay, Jason, your final thoughts. Thanks, gentlemen. Also, before we go, I'll let you kind of give me your final thoughts on that one, Jason. Just anything you can throw in the pot would really be appreciated.
I would just say, it's going back to what I was saying before about complicating systems. There are 2 sides to technology. Yeah, the one side of technology on systems, we're talking about false alarm reduction here, unwanted alarm reductions here. Okay, so and user experience. One side of the technology is the actual detector technology that you install on the ceiling. Yeah, the technology that's in there. Now the end user doesn't have to get involved with that at all. That's a design stage. Okay, so my opinion is that in order to make the user experience better and in order to reduce unwanted alarms, the technology that we install upon there should be the best technology available. Okay, so that it can do the job without bothering the end user. All of the work is being done by the fire alarm panel. That computer on the wall is analyzing everything. So there's no requirement for the end user. The other side to technology then is the programmability of the systems, where we can make them sing to any tune we want. And as I said earlier, just because we can doesn't mean we should. So we should try and make these systems as user-friendly as we possibly can. We should use the best technology that we've got, that we can use to actually detect the fires. The one thing we are doing at the moment is introducing bigger screens on our fire alarm panels so that we can give the user more information. And with a little help button, yeah, so they can push the help button. If you don't know what you're doing, there's a help button and it brings up some information. Touchscreen displays are the way that technology is moving forward now. And any help that we can give the end users, we should absolutely give them. But unless it's mandated to have almost a qualification to use fire alarm systems, you're probably not going to see it happening, unfortunately. But I think it's a really great suggestion.
Yeah, good, thanks. I when I say fire protection, I mean from passive to active, so that people do understand why the system is there and how important it is to all the work that's gone into putting it there, just making sure that it's maintained to optimum standards right the way through its life expectancy. So, gentlemen, I apologise that we're 2 minutes over speed. And I want to say thanks ever so much to yourself, Vinay, and Warrington Fire, and your time expertise, also Jason and Johnson Controls, and your time and expertise, which is really, really appreciated. The presentations were fantastic. Apologies once again for the technology. I was actually waiting in a lobby, and I must have been in a different lobby of a different exhibition. I don't know. But anyway, long story short, I'm here now. I'm going to basically hand back to Philip, who has appeared magically, which is fantastic. Philip, thanks ever so much. And all of our people that are kind of listening or watching, thanks very much indeed for joining. I hope you're safe and well. You and your family stay safe and well. And I'm going to hand back to Philip. Thanks.